Heiress slapped a single dad's grandmother in a wheelchair. Minutes later, he canceled the $1.4 billion deal. The slap echoed through the grand ballroom so loudly that every conversation stopped. An elderly grandmother sitting helplessly in a wheelchair turned her face in shock, one trembling hand rising toward her burning cheek as the wealthy heiress stood over her in a red designer gown. But what the heiress did not know was that the woman she had just humiliated was the grandmother of the quiet single dad standing only a few steps away. And within minutes, that single dad would make one decision that would cost the heiress's family $1.4 billion. If you believe kindness matters, that everyone deserves dignity, and that people sometimes deserve a second chance, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this story, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness for more stories that remind us what truly matters. The evening had been designed to celebrate wealth, power, and one of the biggest business deals of the year. The Harrington family had gathered inside an elegant hotel ballroom to announce a $1.4 billion partnership that would transform their company into a global empire. Investors, celebrities, executives, and politicians filled the room, dressed in expensive suits and glittering gowns. At the center of it all stood Victoria Harrington, the family's 29-year-old heiress, who had grown up believing that money could solve almost every problem. She moved through the crowd with confidence, expecting everyone to step aside whenever she entered a room. She had never imagined that one moment of cruelty would bring her entire world crashing down. Near the entrance sat Margaret Ellis, an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Her silver hair was carefully arranged, and she wore a simple navy dress that had belonged to her late daughter. She had been invited because her grandson, Daniel Ellis, was the mysterious businessman behind the company that controlled the technology Victoria's family desperately needed for their $1.4 billion expansion. Daniel was a single father who had built his company from nothing after losing almost everything. He rarely attended glamorous events, but that night he had brought his grandmother because she had raised him when nobody else could. She had worked 2 jobs, sacrificed her own comfort, and somehow found enough love to convince a frightened little boy that his future could still be bright. Margaret accidentally positioned her wheelchair near Victoria's path while trying to get a better view of the stage. Victoria stopped, stared at her, and demanded that she move. Margaret apologized and tried to maneuver the chair backward, but one wheel caught against the edge of a carpet. She struggled to free it. Instead of helping, Victoria became furious. In front of dozens of people, she insulted Margaret for being in the way and accused her of deliberately seeking attention. Margaret lowered her eyes and quietly apologized again. Then Victoria raised her hand and slapped her across the face. The ballroom fell silent. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, not because of the physical pain, but because of the humiliation. A few guests looked away. Others whispered nervously. Victoria seemed almost satisfied, until she noticed Daniel walking toward them. He had seen everything. Daniel did not shout. He did not threaten her. He simply knelt beside his grandmother and gently held her trembling hand. He asked if she was hurt, and Margaret, still trying to protect everyone around her, whispered that she was fine. Daniel looked at the red mark on her cheek and then slowly stood. The room waited for an explosion, but his voice remained calm. He announced that the $1.4 billion agreement between his company and the Harrington family was officially cancelled. Victoria laughed at first, believing he was bluffing. Her father rushed toward him, insisting that business decisions could not be changed because of a personal misunderstanding. Daniel looked at him and explained that money had never been the reason he built his company. He had built it because his grandmother had taught him that success without character was nothing. He could not enter a partnership with people who believed wealth gave them permission to mistreat the vulnerable. Within minutes, panic spread through the Harrington family. Lawyers scrambled to find a solution. Investors demanded explanations. The company's stock began falling as news of the cancelled deal reached the outside world. Victoria finally understood the seriousness of what she had done. She approached Margaret with tears in her eyes and apologized. But Margaret did something nobody expected. She reached for Victoria's hand and told her that an apology was only the beginning. If she truly regretted what she had done, she needed to become the kind of person who would never treat another human being that way again. Those words changed Victoria more than any punishment could have. She publicly accepted responsibility and used part of her fortune to establish a foundation supporting elderly people with disabilities and families struggling to afford long-term care. Daniel eventually agreed to reconsider the business relationship, not because the Harrington family was wealthy, but because Victoria had begun proving that she could change. Months later, Daniel visited his grandmother at the foundation's first community center. Margaret smiled as children and elderly visitors filled the halls. Daniel told her that everything had changed because of her. She shook her head and reminded him that the greatest deals in life were never measured in billions. They were measured in the people we choose to protect when nobody else is watching. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness. Sometimes one act of kindness can change a life, while one act of cruelty can destroy everything we thought we had. And before you leave, comment, kindness is greater than money, if you believe every person deserves dignity, no matter their wealth, age, or position. Because in the end, Daniel did not cancel a $1.4 billion deal simply to punish someone. He canceled it to remind an entire room that human dignity will always be worth more than